Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking something absolutely massive. Ryan P. Hilger's groundbreaking research on exactly why our traditional approach to cybersecurity is, quite frankly, failing us. And more importantly, how a totally new three-dimensional model can actually fix it. Look, if you've been following the huge shifts in digital infrastructure lately, you already know that the old way of just building higher and higher walls, it just isn't working anymore. Today, we're talking about moving from a static concept of security to a highly dynamic state of true resilience. Let's dive in. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the limits of cybersecurity, then move into defining true cyber resilience, explore the cyber resilience cube, find our policy blind spots, put the cube in action, and finally look at the future of resilience. All right, starting us off, Section 1, the limits of cybersecurity. To really grasp the problem, we just need to look at the sheer scale of the threats we faced recently. In 2020, SolarWinds showed us how a single compromised software update could essentially slip right past the guards and infiltrate thousands of downstream networks, including top-tier federal agencies. Then, in 2021, the Colonial Pipeline attack proved that a ransomware hit on a business IT system could literally shut down physical fuel delivery across the entire eastern United States. Crazy, right? And in 2023, the Storm 0558 incident saw threat actors actually forge cloud authentication tokens to access highly sensitive government emails. These cascading, massive disasters make one thing very clear. Adversaries are no longer just hitting isolated targets. They're jumping across organizational boundaries and bringing entire critical mission chains to a grinding halt.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining true cyber resilience.
Now, to stop these escalating threats, we have to recognize a fundamental flaw in our thinking. We constantly confuse two very different things. Cybersecurity is essentially protection, right? It's all about preventing intentional subversion or a forced failure. It's the moat around your castle. But cyber resilience, as defined by the National Academy of Sciences, it's the ability to plan and prepare for, absorb, recover from, and ultimately adapt to adverse events. And this right here is the vital aha moment. True resilience isn't about pretending you're invulnerable. It's about knowing for a fact that you will inevitably take a hit and building the capacity to absorb that punch, recover your operations, and adapt to the new reality. Let's move to Section 3, the Cyber Resilience Cube. So how do we actually map out this kind of adaptability across massive, complex digital infrastructures? Well, Helger developed this brilliantly simple yet comprehensive visual model, the Cyber Resilience Cube. It's a three-dimensional diagnostic framework totally designed to expose your organization's blind spots. It's not just some boring checklist. Think of it more like a 3D scanner for your defensive posture. Here is how it works. The cube breaks down into three distinct axes. First, we have the phase of resilience over time. That's plan, absorb, recover, and adapt. Second, we have the scale of the target, starting at an individual component, zooming out to a system, then an organization, and finally the whole ecosystem. And third, the domain, meaning is the issue technical, human, organizational, or social/institutional. By combining these three dimensions, the cube gives us 64 possible intersections. It's an incredibly precise tool to measure where our resources are really going versus where they actually need to be. Okay, Section 4, finding our policy blind spots. Now, we are going to look at some data that proves exactly why our billion-dollar investments keep falling short. Hiker analyzed 49 major federal and international cyber policy documents to see what we actually care about. Look at this contour plot. Notice how all the heat, those yellow and light green areas, is tightly clustered right down in the bottom left corner. That specific area represents short-term timeframes and individual technical components. This means our policies are almost entirely obsessed with immediate short-term fixes. Meanwhile, look at the top right, the area representing long-term adaptation and ecosystem-level coordination. It is completely, dangerously empty. And that reveals the glaring missing links in our current strategy. We've got a heavy emphasis on just planning and absorbing the hit, mostly at the individual component scale, patching a piece of software or configuring a firewall. But we have a severe lack of capabilities in the adapt phase, which is where actual institutional learning happens. Plus, there's virtually zero coordination at the broader ecosystem scale. Essentially, we're stuck in this rigid compliance mindset, hyper-focusing on isolated tech while totally ignoring the human elements and ecosystem interactions that actually keep society running.
Let's anchor this in reality with Section 5, the cube in action.
Let's treat this like a mini mystery and apply the cube to real-world incidents. Think back to that 2023 Microsoft Storm 0558 breach we mentioned earlier, where a state actor forged tokens to read government emails. How does the cube explain what really went wrong and how we responded to it? When we map out this incident, the picture becomes crystal clear. Yes, the initial breach was an absorb component technical failure, a specific flaw in Microsoft's token signing infrastructure. But look at what the recovery actually took. That was a recover organization human effort. It required massive, stressful human coordination across multiple government agencies just to rotate credentials and rebuild trust. And the ultimate lesson learned? That was an adapt ecosystem social realization. It highlighted the extreme fragility of relying on cloud monocultures. So the cube perfectly proves that while a hack might start as a technical failure, true recovery and adaptation almost always demand massive human coordination and ecosystem-wide changes. And we see this exact same pattern again with the near-catastrophic 2024 XZ-Utils backdoor. Someone managed to hide malicious code inside a widely used open-source compression library. If we run this through the cube, step 1, plan, ecosystem, technical, proactive controls, completely absent. Step 2, absorb system human. The only reason this didn't cause a global meltdown was sheer human vigilance. A single developer just happened to notice his system was running a tiny fraction of a second too slow. That's it. And step 3, adapt organization. Organizational. This near miss triggered urgent reviews of how we govern open source software globally. It is just another crisis proving that human vigilance is constantly forced to plug the massive institutional holes at the ecosystem level. Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, the future of resilience. As we wrap up this explainer, I think Hilger really hits the nail on the head with this quote. The cube enables a shift from compliance-driven security to mission-driven resilience. This isn't just theory. This framework practically empowers executives and infrastructure operators to finally move away from those rigid check-the-box defenses and towards dynamic, adaptable operations. It literally shows you exactly where you're overinvesting in static walls and where you're underinvesting in human adaptability. So, I want to leave you with this provocative question. Take a hard, honest look at your own organization. When you map your defenses across those 64 intersections of the cyber resilience cube, are you genuinely prepared to absorb a hit, recover, and adapt to a new normal? Or are you just blindly building technical walls, waiting for the inevitable day that they fall? Something to really think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep building that adaptive capacity.